things that help you focus, things that help you stay on task. What are they? Well, let's just talk about some things that lift you up. There are amphetamines like Adderall, dextroamphetamine. There are stimulants like Ritalin, methylphenidate. And there are other things like Modafinil, Armodafinil. And just for the matter of completeness, there are other things out there that stimulate you that commonly we use. Everyone knows about caffeine, Starbucks coffee, Diet Cokes, all that stuff. It's got caffeine in it. Coffee, tea, Mountain Dew. Cocaine stimulates you. Nicotine in tobacco stimulates you. Khat, K-H-A-T, it's from the Horn of Africa. They chew on these leaves, and the Somalians and Ethiopians, they chew on them and they get hyped up and they buy it in these open air markets. I've seen it. There's bath salts that hype you up. There's mephedrone, which is a synthetic compound that's a cathinone that stimulates you. There's ginseng that stimulates you. But for today's purposes, we're talking about amphetamines, stimulants, and a little bit about Modafinil, Armodafinil. So let's talk about amphetamines and stimulants. What are they used for? Well, they're used for attention deficit disorder. College kids use them to study and stay focused. They can be used for narcolepsy. That's where you suddenly fall asleep in the middle of your day, and it could have bouts of narcoleptic episodes where you just fall asleep. It keeps you awake. The amphetamines, they're used for binge eating disorder like Vyvanse, less dexamphetamine. They can be used for obesity. They can be used as an aphrodisiac to increase sexual desire. They can be used for binge eating disorder. They can be used to get high. People use them recreationally. What other uses? They improve your cognition, help you study, attention deficit, hyperactive disorder. They can be used for fatigue, binge eating. Okay, what are the types of amphetamines? Here's the thing with this. It looks a lot more complicated than it is. Amphetamine itself is a mixture of a mixture of a mirror image. Let's call it left and right for practical purposes. Levoamphetamine and dextroamphetamine. This was synthesized in the early 1930s. All the amphetamines are based around the amphetamine molecule. So you have levoamphetamine and dextroamphetamine. Was the primary molecule that was produced has a left and a right, or a mirror image. They separated them, and then dextroamphetamine became Dexedrine, which is Desoxyn. Then they took that Dexedrine and made a prodrug that, when it's in the liver, breaks down to dexedrine. It's called less dexamphetamine, and that's Vyvanse. And then when you take the molecule and you add what's called a methyl group, it becomes methamphetamine. So I described 4 types or 4 alterations in the molecule. Methamphetamine, which is crystal meth, and its crystal form can be smoked and is abused. Amphetamine, which is the racemic mixture, a mirror image of the levoamphetamine, the dextroamphetamine. Lisdexamphetamine, which is the prodrug of dextroamphetamine and dextroamphetamine. So they're kind of 4 different molecules. And they're used for the different uses which I discussed. The methylphenidate, just for completeness, just some of these amphetamines on the market, Adzenys, Dyanavel, Evekeo, it's just amphetamine. There's nothing fancy about these names. The only thing difference is some of them take longer for your body to absorb because they make the capsule or the tablet slow release in your system. There's dextroamphetamine, pure dextroamphetamine drugs on the market, Zenzedi, Procentra, and Dexedrine. There's a mixture one that's very common. It's a mixture of amphetamine salts that has dextroamphetamine and amphetamine salts, which is the mixture of levo and dextroamphetamine. That's called Adderall. There's methamphetamine, which is Desoxyn, and there's less dexamphetamine, which is Vyvanse. Those are all the ones on the market. There's nothing magical about it. It's all virtually the same thing. So if one doctor uses one, another uses another, these brand names, don't get confused. It's all the same stuff. The stimulants, on the other hand, are methylphenidate products. The methylphenidate products commonly are Ritalin. Ritalin extended release. There's combinations between slow release and immediate release Ritalin called Quillichew, Aptensio, Adhansia, Metadate. Those are all specially designed capsules or tablets where you get some immediately and some later on. There's nothing magical about this. It's all methylphenidate. There's some interesting methylphenidate products on the market. One's a liquid, Quillichew liquid. I give to little kids who can't take tablets. There's a patch called Daytrana. And there's one, get this, you take it at night, Jornaypm, and the pill is designed to not release or absorb the methylphenidate till the next morning, so you can take it at night. Then there's delayed release products that slowly release it during the day, like Concerta or Metadate XR. So they're all methylphenidate. There's some difference. There's one drug which is a little different. It's called an isomer. So it's called, Focalin is its brand name, it's called methylphenidate. An isomer means it's the same molecule, but it holds a different position in space. So let's say this, my two hands, this would be Ritalin. They altered how this molecule sits in space to go like this. It's the same, made of the same stuff, but it sits different in space. It's called methylphenidate Focalin. And they have immediate release Focalin and extended release Focalin. All they did was they changed how it sits in space. They made it more potent. That's why you have Focalin. So in summation, there are two types of methylphenidate. Methylphenidate and desmethylphenidate. And there are 4 types of amphetamine, methamphetamine, the regular amphetamine, which is enantiomers, the levo and the dexamphetamine, the lisdexamphetamine, which is the prodrug of dextroamphetamine. When it goes into your body, it breaks down to dextroamphetamine, but there are 4 different types. We explain the uses of these drugs. What are the side effects? Well, depends how you use it. If you shoot this drug or smoke it, you can really get an overdose, seizures, convulsions, tachycardia, stroke, heart attack. You don't eat, you don't sleep, you become psychotic, paranoid, hallucinations, delusion. It's really nasty stuff. I've seen it, worked in the emergency room for 20 years. You know, the crystal meth, they come in, their teeth are always ruined too. They're always got these little stubby little black knobs for teeth. Destroys your teeth. But they come in emaciated, they lose weight, they haven't slept, psychotic, dehydrated because they don't even drink. And they usually seize or have a heart attack or a stroke. They're an absolute mess. But these drugs are fairly safe if you take it in pill form. And what I know from working in the emergency room is that when people abuse amphetamines, the normal dose is 40 milligrams, 20 milligrams a day. When people abuse it, they use 500, they use a half gram, which is 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams a day. So, and they smoke it or shoot it. But if you just take this as a regular pill, it really doesn't have a withdrawal. Maybe you're tired, you want to eat a lot, you have funny dreams, you sleep a lot. That's the withdrawal from amphetamine. It's pretty safe. And if you take it by your mouth, it's hard to overdose. They're pretty safe. So you could take these drugs pretty safely. So we talked about the dangers of taking them, shooting them in your veins or smoking them is very dangerous. You could die. But by and large, taking them by your mouth, you get increased heart rate, maybe an increased blood pressure, your face turns red, or you get a headache, you can't eat. You become hyper-focused and just stare and want to just focus on one thing. It's a hyper-focusing. Some people may get irritable when it wears off or anxious. Headaches is a big one, not sleeping, not eating. You don't really want to give it to people with kidney problems because it is metabolized by the kidney. One thing, if you want to increase the dose or the blood level of amphetamine or stimulant in your body, alkalize your urine. That means don't take acid. Like orange juice would decrease the level because it promotes metabolism and excretion, where baking soda would increase the level in your system. Other side effects, tics, makes tics worse. Any other side effects? Dry mouth. Some people can start sweating, nausea, diarrhea, abdominal cramping. It diverts blood to your muscles, so it increases athletic performance. So, people in athletic and Olympic events and competitive sports can use it as an advantage. Absolutely gives you an advantage. But it screws up your heart, your digestive system. Those are pretty much the side effects. How do these drugs work? They work very similar. Remember, we talked about neurons. This is the end of a neuron, and this is the beginning. So this would be a whole neuron. This receives messages, this releases them. This is the axon terminal that sends the electrical message. Well, what it does, this synaptic cleft between the end of a neuron and the beginning of the neuron, and there's like 86 billion neurons. This isn't a one-for-one, it's millions upon millions, but this is the end, and this is the beginning, and it just goes down the chain, electrical, chemical. This would be the synaptic cleft. Well, the methylphenidate, which are the stimulants, block the norepinephrine transport pump that sucks it back up, and the dopamine transport pump. So it allows for more dopamine and norepinephrine to be sitting in the synaptic cleft to stimulate these dendrites to carry on and send the electrical signal. So that's how the stimulants work, by blocking the reuptake of norepinephrine and dopamine. The amphetamines work differently. They block the norepinephrine and dopamine pump. They also block norepinephrine and dopamine from entering into storage vesicles in the cell body. And also, they promote or pump or have gates that release norepinephrine and dopamine into the synaptic cleft. So the mechanism for amphetamines is much more complicated. And it's much more potent for that reason. And it's much more effective, I would say. So the amphetamines are stronger in what they do, keeping you awake and keeping you awake longer. The amphetamines can last 6 to 8 hours, where Ritalin 3 to 4 hours, the stimulants. So I tend to use amphetamines in adults, and I tend to use stimulants in children. They're just not as potent. They're much milder in terms of their effect. There are stimulants. There are other ones that I want to talk about. The Modafinil, which is Provigil, and Nuvigil, Armodafinil, which is basically Modafinil has a left and a right version. The Armodafinil is the right version. That's the newer generation Provigil, which is Modafinil. The mechanism of action of that particular product, which sort of keeps people alert, it's not really addicting. The amphetamines and stimulants are Schedule 2, which is very controlled by the government, where the Provigil and Nuvigil, which is Modafinil and Armodafinil, really are Schedule 4. You can't overdose with them. They don't give you a euphoria like the amphetamines or stimulants. They sort of keep you alert. They may or may not help with learning, but they definitely keep you alert, may enhance physical exertion a little bit. But I think if you want to just keep alert, those are good ones. I think the militaries use them to keep pilots who have long missions, keep them alert. They work by the reuptake of the dopamine and reuptake of norepinephrine. That is believed to be the mechanism. It is not clear-cut. They also may have effects on orexin, which keeps you awake, and they may have effects on decreasing inhibitory compounds like GABA, and they may increase glutamate. That's all speculation. What are the contraindications for these drugs? Well, if you have kidney problems, you don't take them because they're metabolized in the kidney. If you have known problems with substance abuse, you don't want to be taking amphetamines or stimulants. It may promote mania, so you don't want to take it if someone has known problems with mania or problems with psychosis. There are issues with people with thyroid disease, people with coronary artery disease, people with heart disease, people with hypertension, people with racing hearts or tachycardia, you don't want to give it to. Anyone with cardiovascular disease, you don't want to give it to. People with known Tourette's disorder or tic disorder, you don't want to give them this drug. So that sort of wraps up the conversation about stimulants, which are the methylphenidate and desmethylphenidate, the amphetamines, which are methamphetamine, the amphetamine, the less dexamphetamine, and the dextroamphetamine. I also made mention to other stimulants were a different mechanism of action, Provigil, which is Modafinil, and Armodafinil, which is Nuvigil. And this for my patients and why I use certain drugs and why I don't is simply what you can tolerate and how we can get it into your body, either through a patch, through a liquid, through a slow release tablet, through a tablet which is immediate release and slow release, or using the varying molecules which are very similar. Thank you.